I'm Luke, 35, and until last month I thought being the financial backbone of my family meant they actually loved me. For 13 years I supported my parents through job losses and my sister through multiple college attempts, all while Uncle Jeffrey whispered poison behind my back. Then came that text, "We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." Discovering they'd moved without telling me shattered everything I believed about family. When Uncle Jeffrey finally answered my call, I simply replied, "Of course. I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing." Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I rebuilt my life after losing everything except my dignity. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, shaped my understanding of family in ways I'm still unpacking in therapy. Our two-story colonial with the slightly crooked mailbox wasn't fancy, but it was home, a place where my parents, David and Margaret, built what I thought was an unshakable foundation for me and my younger sister Rachel. Dad worked as a project manager at a construction company, and Mom taught third grade at the elementary school just 3 blocks from our house. We weren't wealthy, but we never went without the necessities. My relationship with Uncle Jeffrey, Dad's younger brother, was positive in those early years. He'd visit during holidays, bringing extravagant gifts and entertaining us with stories of his business ventures across the country. I remember looking up to him, this larger-than-life figure who seemed to have everything figured out. School came naturally to me. While Rachel struggled with academics from an early age, I excelled bringing home report cards that went straight to the refrigerator door. My parents beamed with pride at parent-teacher conferences, and I basked in their approval. Those gold stars and perfect attendance certificates became my love language. Achievement meant love, a connection I wouldn't recognize as unhealthy until decades later. The first hairline fractures in our family's financial stability appeared during my sophomore year of high school. Dad's company downsized, cutting his hours and benefits. Mom picked up extra tutoring sessions after school, but the strain showed in the new wrinkles around her eyes and the hushed conversations I'd overhear late at night from the hallway outside their bedroom. Without hesitation, I got a part-time job at the local grocery store, bagging items and collecting shopping carts from the parking lot. Every 2 weeks I'd cash my check and slip 3/4 of it into the household expense envelope Mom kept in the kitchen drawer. She'd protest weekly, but I could see the relief in her eyes. "You're too young to be worrying about money, Luke," she'd say, but she never refused the help. When college acceptance letters arrived my senior year, I had options, including a partial scholarship to a prestigious university across the country. But leaving meant my family would lose my income, so I chose the state university, 30 minutes from home. This allowed me to commute and continue working while earning my degree in business and computer science. Those 4 years blurred together in a haze of classes, late-night study sessions, and weekend shifts. While my classmates built connections through campus activities and internships, I rushed home to help Mom with groceries or to fix the perpetually leaking kitchen sink that Dad was too exhausted to address after his shifts. Despite the limitations, I graduated with honors. My family filled an entire row at commencement, Uncle Jeffrey included, though he spent most of the ceremony checking his phone and stepping out for calls. At 22, I landed an entry-level position at TechSphere, a growing software company that offered something my family desperately needed: stability and a paycheck that could support more than just me. Moving into my own apartment felt both liberating and guilt-inducing. I found a place just 15 minutes from my parents' house, close enough to remain deeply involved in family matters, but with a door I could close when I needed space. That door, I would learn, remained mostly open, as family needs constantly spilled into my personal life. The financial support started small, covering the electric bill when it ran high during a particularly cold winter, paying for Rachel's textbooks when she finally enrolled in the local community college, buying new tires for Mom's aging sedan. Each contribution was met with profuse gratitude that made me feel valued and needed. As my parents' financial situation worsened, Dad was laid off entirely, and Mom developed chronic back pain that limited her teaching hours. My contributions grew from occasional assistance to regular necessity. By 25, I had set up automatic monthly transfers to my parents' account. Not large sums, but enough to ensure they could make mortgage payments and keep the lights on. Rachel's academic journey proved rocky. Despite my encouragement and financial backing, she dropped out after 3 semesters, citing stress and uncertainty about her direction. I continued supporting her, paying her portion of rent when she moved in with roommates, covering her car insurance, and occasionally settling credit card bills she couldn't manage. Uncle Jeffrey's visits became more frequent during this period, and I noticed his subtle criticisms whenever I discussed family finances. "You're making them dependent, nephew," he'd say while helping himself to the expensive whiskey I'd brought for Dad's birthday. "Sometimes you have to let people solve their own problems." His words stung because they contained a grain of truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. Instead, I doubled down, believing that family takes care of family no matter the cost. The first real conflicts arose when I questioned some of my parents' spending choices: a new television, when the mortgage was behind an unnecessary kitchen renovation funded by a high-interest loan. "We deserve some comforts," Luke's mom said defensively. "We can't live like we're in poverty just because things are tight." Dad would change the subject, and Rachel would suddenly remember an appointment. These early warning signs flashed before me, but I deliberately looked away, unwilling to see the pattern forming, a pattern that would eventually break my heart and rebuild my spirit in ways I never imagined possible. My 27th birthday coincided with a significant promotion at TechSphere. After 5 years of 60-hour work weeks and skipped vacations, I became the youngest senior project manager in company history. The accompanying salary increase, nearly double my previous earnings, felt like divine timing. Dad had been unemployed for 18 months, and Mom's back issues had progressed to the point where she could only substitute teach occasionally. The first thing I did with my new financial capability was pay off my parents' mortgage. I still remember bringing the documents to Sunday dinner, watching their faces shift from confusion to disbelief to tearful gratitude as I explained what I'd done. "You can't possibly afford this," Dad protested weakly, even as his fingers traced the paid-in-full stamp with reverence. "I can, and I did," I replied, feeling a surge of pride and purpose. "You gave me everything growing up. Let me do this for you." That night, as we ate Mom's pot roast in the dining room where I'd done homework throughout my childhood, I felt complete. This, I thought, was what success meant: the ability to lift burdens from those you love. With the mortgage eliminated, I turned my attention to Rachel. She had been working at a coffee shop for nearly 2 years, living paycheck to paycheck, and occasionally hinting at returning to school someday. I created a comprehensive plan for her education tuition at the community college, a monthly stipend for living expenses, and the promise of a reliable used car once she completed her first year with good grades. "This is your chance to build something for yourself," I told her over lunch at her favorite sandwich shop. "You won't have to worry about money. Just focus on your studies." Rachel hugged me tightly and promised not to waste the opportunity. For 3 semesters, she seemed to thrive, sending me excited texts about her classes in early childhood education and making the dean's list her second term. Meanwhile, I established a tradition of hosting family dinners every Wednesday at my apartment. I'd cook elaborate meals or order from high-end restaurants, creating a weekly gathering that became the highlight of my otherwise work-dominated existence. Those evenings around my dining table, watching Dad laugh again, seeing Mom relaxed without pain etching her features, justified every sacrifice. The first noticeable shift in our dynamic occurred about 8 months after paying off the mortgage. Mom called requesting money for a small bathroom renovation that, upon further questioning, involved imported Italian tile and custom cabinetry. "We thought since we don't have the mortgage anymore, we could make some improvements," she explained, her voice taking on a defensive edge when I hesitated. Similar requests followed. Dad needed a new golf membership to network for job opportunities. Rachel wanted a spring break trip with friends to decompress from academic pressure. Each time I expressed concern about unnecessary expenses, I was reminded of all they had sacrificed for me growing up, or made to feel that my questions indicated a lack of generosity. The first truly alarming incident came when Rachel dropped out of college again, this time without telling me. I discovered it only when the school called about the unused portion of the tuition I'd paid. When confronted, she became uncharacteristically hostile. "Not everyone can be perfect like you, Luke. Maybe I need to figure things out my own way without you micromanaging my life. Around this time, Uncle Jeffrey began attending our family gatherings more regularly, often arriving with my parents rather than separately. I noticed whispered conversations that would stop when I entered the room, and an increasing tendency for family decisions to be made without my input despite my financial stake. The exclusion started subtly: a family brunch I wasn't invited to, a weekend trip to the coast I learned about through Facebook. When I mentioned feeling left out, Mom patted my hand dismissively. "You're so busy with work, honey. We didn't want to bother you with every little thing." The discovery that truly shook me came through an innocent comment from my parents' neighbor. He mentioned helping Dad unload materials for their new deck, a project I knew nothing about. Further investigation revealed my parents had taken out a significant home equity loan, using the house I had paid off as collateral to fund a series of luxury improvements. That Sunday, I arrived at dinner determined to have an honest conversation about financial responsibility and transparency. "I'm happy to help," I explained carefully, "but I need to know what's happening with the money and be consulted on major decisions." The response was immediate and unified. Mom burst into tears, Dad accused me of keeping score of my generosity, and Rachel stormed out claiming I was trying to control everyone. Uncle Jeffrey sat silently watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. "After everything we did for you growing up," Dad said, his voice cold, "I never expected you'd throw your help back in our faces." I left their house that night with a hollow feeling in my chest, wondering how my desire for basic financial honesty had been twisted into something ugly and selfish. Despite the hurt, I continued the automatic deposits and paid Rachel's rent when she called 3 days later apologizing and claiming she had overreacted. My personal life suffered as the family dynamics consumed more of my emotional energy. Melissa, a marketing director I'd been dating for 7 months, ended our relationship after I canceled our weekend getaway to deal with yet another family financial emergency. "You're a wonderful man, Luke," she said gently, "but there's no room for anyone else in your life. Your family takes all of you, and you let them." Friends stopped calling after too many declined invitations. Colleagues no longer included me in after-work gatherings. My world narrowed to the office and family obligations with little space for anything else. Occasionally, I would stand on my balcony late at night, looking at the lights of Portland spreading before me, and wonder if I had made the right choices. Once, during a particularly dark moment, I drafted an email outlining my intention to stop all financial support, detailing the strain and one-sided nature of our relationship. I never sent it. Instead, I deleted the draft and set up a consultation with a financial advisor to establish more sustainable boundaries, while continuing to help my family, the only constant in my increasingly isolated existence. After much reflection and several sessions with my financial advisor, I created a formal budget for family support. The plan was straightforward: a reasonable monthly allowance for my parents, a separate fund for Rachel's educational expenses if she chose to return to school, and an emergency reserve for unexpected medical or housing issues. This structure, I hoped, would provide stability while establishing necessary boundaries. I presented the plan during a quiet moment after Sunday dinner, careful to frame it as a way to ensure long-term sustainability rather than a reduction in support. "I've been thinking about how to make sure I can help you all for years to come," I explained, spreading the neatly prepared documents on the coffee table. "This approach will actually give you more security." My parents exchanged looks I couldn't quite read before Dad cleared his throat. "We appreciate your thoroughness, son, but doesn't this seem a bit formal for family?" I also offered to pay for financial counseling, suggesting a colleague of my advisor who specialized in helping families develop independence and financial literacy. Mom's smile tightened at the corners. "That's thoughtful, Luke. But we don't need a stranger telling us how to manage our household." Rachel's situation concerned me most. Her pattern of starting and abandoning endeavors, coupled with increasing withdrawal and mood swings, suggested deeper issues than simple indecision. During a private lunch, I broached the subject of therapy. "I'd be happy to cover the costs," I assured her. "Sometimes talking to a professional can help clarify things when you're feeling stuck." She stirred her iced tea, slowly avoiding my eyes. "Maybe. I'll think about it." To my surprise, my family agreed to the budget plan, though their acquiescence felt reluctant. For several weeks, the new system seemed to work. The constant emergencies diminished, and I began to reclaim small pieces of my personal life, joining a weekend hiking group and reconnecting with a few old friends. Eager to celebrate this progress and strengthen our relationship, I planned an extravagant family vacation to Hawaii, 7 days, at a luxury resort on Maui, with all expenses covered. I spent weeks arranging private tours, reserving oceanfront rooms, and researching restaurants that would accommodate Mom's dietary restrictions. This trip, I thought, would reset our relationship and create positive memories to replace the tension of recent months. 2 days before departure, Mom called with an unexpected request. Could Uncle Jeffrey join us? He had helped them tremendously lately, she explained, and it seemed wrong to exclude him from such a wonderful opportunity. Though frustrated by the last-minute change, I agreed, booking an additional room and adjusting all the reservations. The first few days in paradise unfolded beautifully. We snorkeled in crystal-clear waters, took a helicopter tour over volcanic landscapes, and enjoyed elaborate meals watching the sunset. I photographed my family smiling against backdrops of stunning beaches and lush mountains, feeling that perhaps we had turned a corner. The illusion shattered on the 4th night, when my credit card company called to verify unusual activity. The representative listed several charges. I hadn't authorized a private yacht excursion, spa treatments, and shopping at high-end boutiques, totaling over $5,000. After confirming these were fraudulent, I confronted my family during dinner at the resort's most expensive restaurant. Did anyone book additional activities using my card without discussing it with me? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. The ensuing silence told me everything. Rachel studied her plate intently. Mom's hand trembled around her wine glass, and Dad shifted uncomfortably. Only Uncle Jeffrey maintained eye contact, his expression almost challenging. "We thought you wanted us to enjoy ourselves fully," he finally said. "Isn't that why you brought us here, to experience everything this beautiful place has to offer?" "I'm happy to provide this vacation," I replied carefully, "but making unauthorized charges without even mentioning them crosses a line. We had an agreement about financial transparency." What should have been a reasonable discussion exploded into the worst argument of our lives. Uncle Jeffrey accused me of controlling the family with money and keeping score of every penny. Mom began crying, claiming I was embarrassing everyone in public. Dad suggested I had changed, becoming obsessed with money despite my success. Rachel delivered the most painful blow. "Sometimes I wish we were just a normal family who struggled together instead of having to constantly thank you for everything." I left the table, walking along the beach for hours, as the full moon illuminated the waves. When I returned to my room well past midnight, I found a note from Dad saying they would be giving me space for the remainder of the trip. The next morning I changed my flight and returned to Portland alone 3 days early. Back home, I sent a heartfelt email apologizing for my part in the vacation conflict, while gently reiterating my need for honesty and respect regarding finances. Their response came days later, a brief message acknowledging receipt without addressing any of the substantive issues. Upon their return, I attempted reconciliation with small gestures, dropping off Mom's favorite pastries, offering to help Dad with yard work, inviting Rachel for coffee. Their reception remained cool interactions, stiff and perfunctory. Family dinners resumed, but lacked the warmth and ease of before. During this strained period, I discovered a truth that had been hidden from me for years. While reviewing some old financial documents for tax purposes, I found references to my college fund, an account my grandparents had established for me at birth and contributed to until their passing when I was 12. According to the statements, it had contained nearly $80,000 by my senior year of high school. Confused by this discovery, I called the bank listed on the documents. After verifying my identity, the representative confirmed the account had been emptied in a single withdrawal the year Rachel started high school, 3 years before I began college. The authorized withdrawal had been made by my father. This explained why my parents had been so insistent I attend state school despite my scholarship offers elsewhere. The money earmarked for my education had been used for something else, something they never disclosed, forcing me to work throughout college while they pretended financial limitations were the only obstacle to my dreams. When carefully questioned, Mom eventually admitted the truth: they had used my college fund to pay for Rachel's private school and tutoring when she struggled academically, along with family debt that had accumulated from Uncle Jeffrey's failed business venture that my father had secretly invested in. We meant to replace it, she insisted, tears forming. But things kept coming up, and then you got that scholarship anyway, so it all worked out. The casual dismissal of this significant breach of trust left me speechless. Yet even then, I continued the monthly deposits paid for Mom's physical therapy when her back pain flared, and covered the deductible when Dad needed minor surgery. My support remained steady, even as my heart grew heavier with each interaction. The final blow in this chapter of escalating tensions came when I discovered Rachel had never re-enrolled in college despite receiving funds designated for tuition. Instead, she had been using the money to finance a fledgling jewelry business, a venture she had hidden from me while accepting educational support. When confronted, she broke down, admitting Uncle Jeffrey had encouraged her to follow her passion and suggested that telling me would only result in me trying to control her choices. The revelation that my uncle was actively undermining my relationship with my sister sent me into a tailspin of doubt and hurt that would only deepen in the months to come. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning as I reviewed quarterly projections at my desk. The subject line, "Exciting Opportunity," seemed innocuous enough until I opened it and saw the TechSphere logo and the words, "Regional Director Position, Seattle Division." My supervisor had recommended me for a significant promotion that would require relocating to our Seattle office, offering a 40% salary increase, expanded responsibilities, and a clear path to executive leadership. Under normal circumstances, this would have been cause for unmitigated celebration. Instead, my first thought was of my family and their reaction to the potential move. Seattle was only 3 hours from Portland, but it might as well have been across the country given our current dynamics. That evening, I invited everyone to dinner at my apartment, preparing my mother's favorite lasagna recipe and splurging on an expensive bottle of wine. Once we had eaten, I shared my news, trying to frame it positively. "I've been offered an amazing opportunity in Seattle." I explained, detailing the professional advantages and mentioning the proximity that would allow frequent visits. "I wanted to discuss it with you all before making any decisions." The silence that followed felt oppressive. Mom set down her wine glass with deliberate care. "So you're abandoning us," she said flatly, not a question but an accusation. Dad shook his head slowly. "I always knew your career would come first eventually. We just didn't expect it so soon." Rachel refused to meet my eyes, while Uncle Jeffrey, who had again joined our family dinner without invitation, leaned back in his chair with an expression that bordered on satisfaction. "Seattle might as well be the moon when you've built your entire life around being here for your family," he observed, swirling the expensive wine I had purchased. "But I suppose everyone has to choose their priorities." Their collective response left me stunned. There was no congratulations, no recognition of the achievement, not even curiosity about what the position entailed. Instead, I faced unanimous disapproval, tinged with something that felt disturbingly like resentment. "It's just something I'm considering," I backpedaled, already feeling the familiar guilt settling in my chest. "I have 2 weeks to decide." The remainder of the evening passed in strained conversation about inconsequential matters. After they left, I sat alone in my dining room, surrounded by dirty dishes and the remnants of a celebration that never materialized, and wrote an email requesting additional time to consider the Seattle offer. The true breaking point came 3 days later. I had stopped by my parents' house unannounced, hoping to discuss the job opportunity more rationally. Finding no one home, I used my key to leave some groceries in the kitchen. That's when I noticed the bank statement on the counter, a joint account I didn't recognize with my parents' names and Uncle Jeffrey's. Against my better judgment, I looked closer. The statement showed regular transfers from my parents to Uncle Jeffrey over the past 6 months, totaling nearly $20,000, money that had almost certainly come from my support payments. Further investigation revealed a folder of loan documents, indicating my parents had been financing Uncle Jeffrey's gambling habit for years, using their home, the home I had paid off, as collateral for loans he had no intention of repaying. I waited, statement in hand, until they returned from grocery shopping with Uncle Jeffrey in tow. The confrontation that followed at Sunday dinner was unlike anything we had experienced before. For the first time, I laid bare the full extent of my feelings. The hurt, the betrayal, the exhaustion of constantly giving without receiving even basic honesty in return. "I've supported this family financially for over a decade," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I've paid off mortgages, covered medical bills, funded education, and never asked for anything except honesty. And this is what I get in return, secret loans to someone who has done nothing but undermine me." Mom dissolved into tears. Dad grew defensive, and Uncle Jeffrey remained surprisingly silent, watching the scene unfold with calculating eyes. It was Rachel who finally broke ranks. "We've been hiding things from you," she admitted quietly. "Not just about the money to Uncle Jeffrey, about everything, because it was easier than facing how dependent we've all become on you." Dad interrupted her sharply. "Your uncle has had some bad luck, but he's family too. You wouldn't understand his situation because you've never struggled like he has." "Bad luck," I echoed incredulously. "He's been gambling away money I provided for your retirement, for Mom's health care, for Rachel's future. And you're defending him." "You don't know everything," Luke, Mom interjected between sobs. "Jeffrey has been there for us in ways you haven't." "In what ways exactly?" I demanded. "What has he contributed besides taking the money I've provided and driving wedges between us?" The conversation devolved from there, with accusations flying and decades of unspoken resentment surfacing. For the first time, I set firm boundaries, making it clear that my continued support would depend on complete financial transparency, including cutting off funds to Uncle Jeffrey and seeking family counseling. "I'm not an endless resource to be drained without consideration," I concluded, emotionally exhausted. "I deserve better than this from the people I love most." I left early, their protests and justifications fading as I closed the door behind me. Driving home through Portland's rainy streets, I felt something shift inside me, a mixture of profound grief and unexpected relief. I had finally spoken my truth, regardless of how it was received. A week passed with no contact from any family member. During this silence, I reflected deeply on my options. The Seattle position represented more than a career advancement. It offered a chance to redefine myself beyond the role of family provider. After days of contemplation, I accepted the offer, emailing my family a thoughtful explanation of my decision, expressing hope that this change might ultimately lead to healthier relationships for all of us. 3 more days of silence followed before the text message that would change everything arrived. It was from my mother's phone, but felt composed by committee. "Luke, we've discussed things as a family. We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." The words blurred before my eyes as I read and reread the message, unable to comprehend this final rejection after years of sacrifice. I called immediately, then again when the first attempt went to voicemail. On the 3rd try, I drove to their house, only to find unfamiliar cars in the driveway and the curtains drawn. A neighbor walking his dog confirmed my suspicions. "The Martins moved out yesterday," he said casually. "Some older fellow was helping them pack up, seemed in quite a hurry." The crushing realization that my family had physically removed themselves from my life, without even saying goodbye in person, left me leaning against my car, struggling to breathe. Uncle Jeffrey had orchestrated their literal disappearance, the ultimate betrayal after years of financial support and emotional investment. When my mother's phone finally answered that evening, it was Uncle Jeffrey's voice that greeted me. "They need a fresh start without your conditions and judgment," he stated without preamble. "I've helped them find a new place where they can live without your constant oversight." The calm that washed over me in that moment surprised even me. Years of suppressed anger and hurt crystallized into a clarity I had never experienced before. "I understand," I replied, my voice steady. "Of course. I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing in the morning." His momentary silence spoke volumes. Before he could recover, I continued, "I genuinely hope you'll take care of them, as well as I have for the past 13 years. Goodbye, Uncle Jeffrey." I ended the call and sat in perfect stillness in my living room, watching as darkness fell over the city I would soon leave behind. The family I had centered my entire adult life around had discarded me the moment I stopped being useful. The pain was excruciating, but beneath it lay something unexpected, the first fragile tendrils of freedom. The morning after receiving that devastating text message, I awoke in clothes from the previous day, having fallen asleep on my couch surrounded by family photos I'd unconsciously gathered from around my apartment. My phone showed 17 missed calls, all to my parents' numbers, all made by me in a state of disbelief before exhaustion had finally claimed me. My first coherent action was to call in sick, to work for the first time in 3 years. My supervisor, concerned by my uncharacteristic absence, offered support without pressing for details. "Take whatever time you need, Luke. The project can wait." Alone in my apartment, I moved through the initial stages of grief with unexpected intensity. Denial had me driving past my parents' former home, finding strangers already moving furniture inside. Anger had me punching my pillow until my shoulders ached while shouting all the things I should have said years ago. Bargaining had me drafting emails promising to increase my financial support if they would only talk to me. By afternoon, I had regained enough composure to address the practical matters. With methodical precision, I logged into my banking portal and canceled every automatic payment and transfer connected to my family, the monthly deposits to my parents, Rachel's rent payments, utility bills, insurance premiums, credit card, minimums. Each cancellation felt simultaneously like a betrayal and an act of self-preservation. Opening a spreadsheet, I calculated the total financial support I had provided over 13 years, an exercise that left me staring at the screen in disbelief. The sum exceeded $300,000, not including gifts, vacations, and emergency expenses I had covered without question. The sheer magnitude of this number brought a strange sense of perspective. I had given more than most people earn in a decade, sacrificing my own financial security, relationships, and happiness in service to people who had just rejected me via text message. The absurdity of it hit me with unexpected force, triggering laughter that quickly dissolved into tears. My apartment, chosen specifically for its extra bedrooms to accommodate family visits, its large dining area for family gatherings, its proximity to my parents' home suddenly felt like a museum dedicated to a life built around people who were no longer present. Every corner held memories: the kitchen where I had taught Rachel to make Christmas cookies, the balcony where Dad and I had watched 4th of July fireworks, the guest room where Mom had stayed after her back surgery. That first night alone was the quietest I had experienced in years. No calls from family members with emergencies, no texts asking for last-minute financial assistance, no planning for Sunday dinner or holiday celebrations. The silence felt deafening and liberating in equal measure. Unable to sleep, I wrote what I promised myself would be my final communication, a lengthy email detailing my unwavering love, despite everything, acknowledging my own mistakes in enabling unhealthy patterns and expressing hope that someday we might rebuild our relationship on more equal footing. I sent it to every email address and phone number I had for each family member, knowing Uncle Jeffrey would likely intercept it, but needing to make one last attempt at connection. As expected, no response came. The next morning I showered, put on my best suit, and drove to TechSphere headquarters. My supervisor's surprise was evident when I walked into his office and formally accepted the Seattle position, requesting the earliest possible start date. "What changed?" he asked clearly, recalling my hesitation just days earlier. "Everything," I replied simply. "I'm ready for a fresh start." The following weeks passed in a blur of preparations. I gave notice on my apartment, sold furniture that wouldn't make the move, and packed personal items that still held meaning. Each decision felt weighted with significance. What to keep from my old life, what to discard, what to donate to charity, rather than offer to family members who had made their position clear. I found myself giving away the expensive sectional sofa, purchased specifically to accommodate family movie nights, donating kitchenware, used exclusively for large family meals, selling the guest beds that would no longer host holiday visitors. Each item released felt like shedding a layer of expectation and obligation I had carried for years. The most difficult moment came during my final walkthrough of the neighborhood where my parents had lived. I drove past their former home, the elementary school where Mom had taught, the park where we had celebrated countless birthdays, the ice cream shop where I had treated Rachel after her dance recitals. These landmarks of shared history now felt like monuments to a life that existed only in memory. Yet amid the grief, unexpected strength emerged. For the first time since college, I made decisions based solely on my preferences and needs. I chose my new Seattle apartment for its stunning view of Puget Sound, rather than its proximity to family. I purchased furniture I actually liked instead of pieces chosen for durability and capacity to host others. I arranged my books alphabetically, rather than keeping family photo albums front and center. The drive to Seattle became a symbolic journey. With each mile marker, the weight on my shoulders seemed to lighten incrementally. I played music I enjoyed, instead of the classics my father preferred. I stopped at roadside attractions that caught my interest rather than rushing to accommodate someone else's schedule. I checked into a luxury hotel for my first night in Seattle, an indulgence I would have previously considered selfish and unnecessary. Setting up my new apartment became an act of self-discovery. What colors did I actually prefer? What artwork spoke to me? What morning routine made me feel most centered? These seemingly simple questions had been subsumed for so long beneath the more pressing question that had governed my adult life. What does my family need from me today? My first week at TechSphere's Seattle office introduced me to colleagues who knew nothing of my history, people who valued my professional expertise without the backdrop of family obligation. My ideas were welcomed. My leadership appreciated, my boundaries respected. In meetings, I found myself speaking with a confidence that had previously been undermined by the constant fear of familial disapproval. One particular interaction stood out during those early days. A fellow director invited me to join a group for happy hour after work. My instinctive response to decline due to potential family obligations rose to my lips before I realized those obligations no longer existed. The simple act of saying yes, I'd love to, without mental calculations about who might need me elsewhere, felt revolutionary. Over drinks with new colleagues, I shared minimal details about my relocation, focusing instead on getting to know them and discussing work projects. For the first time in memory, I existed as just Luke, not as a son, brother, or provider, and discovered that version of myself had value independent of what I could give to others. Returning to my new apartment that evening, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows watching ferries cross Elliott Bay, feeling both completely alone and strangely whole. The family that had defined my identity had walked away, yet here I stood still breathing, still capable, still worthy of taking up space in the world. This realization that my worth extended beyond my utility to others would become the foundation upon which I would build the next chapter of my life, one where giving came from choice rather than obligation, and where love wasn't measured in dollar amounts or sacrifices made. 6 months into my new life in Seattle, signs of genuine healing began to emerge. My role as regional director suited me perfectly, allowing me to leverage both technical knowledge and people skills in ways my previous position hadn't. Under my leadership, the Seattle office exceeded quarterly targets for 2 consecutive periods, earning recognition from corporate headquarters. More significantly, I had begun building authentic connections outside of work. Weekly hiking excursions with an outdoor adventure group introduced me to Seattle's stunning natural surroundings and to people who shared my long-suppressed love for physical challenges. A neighborhood book club provided intellectual stimulation and discussions that extended beyond pleasantries into meaningful territory. For the first time since college, I had friends who knew me as I was not as an extension of family obligations. On my therapist's recommendation, I had started seeing Dr. Elaine Chen, shortly after my arrival, committing to weekly sessions to process the complex grief of family estrangement. Our work together helped me identify patterns that had shaped my understanding of love and worth. You learned early that love was conditional on performance and provision. Dr. Chen observed during one particularly insightful session, your value became tied to what you could give rather than who you are. Through therapy, I began recognizing how my enabling behavior had contributed to the unhealthy dynamics. By constantly solving problems, without allowing natural consequences, I had inadvertently fostered dependency while building my own identity around being needed. Healthy love has boundaries became a mantra I repeated on difficult days. Caring for others shouldn't require sacrificing yourself. The holiday season, my first without family, loomed as a significant emotional hurdle. Rather than spending Thanksgiving alone with memories, I accepted an invitation from Marcus, a colleague who had become a friend, to join his family's celebration. Surrounded by their genuine warmth and inclusion, I experienced both sharp pangs of loss and grateful appreciation for new connections. Christmas morning brought an unexpected development. My phone rang as I was brewing coffee, the screen displaying Rachel's name, the first contact from any family member in 6 months. My hand trembled slightly as I answered. Luke. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered, tentative, in a way my confident sister rarely expressed. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. The conversation that followed was raw and tearful on both sides. Rachel explained that things had deteriorated rapidly after I left. Without my financial support, my parents had fallen behind on payments for their new place. Uncle Jeffrey's promises of help had proven hollow, his own financial situation more precarious than anyone had realized. Everything fell apart so fast, she admitted. One minute we were all united in this weird anger toward you, and the next we were facing eviction with Uncle Jeffrey nowhere to be found. She revealed that Uncle Jeffrey had systematically poisoned my family against me for years, convincing them I used money to control them, while simultaneously encouraging their financial dependence on me. He had intercepted my final email, preventing my parents from reading my words of reconciliation. He told us you were happy to be rid of us, Rachel said, her voice breaking. That you were celebrating your freedom from financial burdens. We had no idea you tried to reach out. The truth of their current situation emerged piece by piece. My parents had moved in with a distant cousin in eastern Oregon, sharing a small spare bedroom while looking for work in an unfamiliar community. Rachel was staying with a friend, working 2 jobs to afford her portion of rent. Uncle Jeffrey had disappeared after borrowing Mom's car, which was later found abandoned at a casino 3 states away. Despite the vindication her revelations provided, I maintained the boundaries I had worked so hard to establish. I'm sorry you're all struggling, I said honestly, but I can't simply resume financial support and pretend nothing happened. I'm not asking for money, Rachel insisted. I just couldn't let another day go by without telling you the truth. We were wrong, Luke. All of us. But especially me. I took advantage of your generosity while resenting you for it. I'm so sorry. We talked for nearly 2 hours, moving beyond recriminations into tentative plans for healing. Rachel asked if she could visit Seattle sometime, a request I granted with clear stipulations about money and expectations. If you come, it needs to be about rebuilding our relationship, I explained. Not about financial help or solving problems. Just brother and sister getting to know each other again. She agreed readily, and we scheduled a visit for the following month. After ending the call, I sat on my balcony watching the winter sun sparkle on Puget Sound, feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time since receiving that devastating text message. Rachel's visit in January marked the beginning of a careful reconciliation process. She arrived by bus rather than asking me to purchase a plane ticket, carrying a small backpack and tremendous emotional baggage. Our initial hours together were awkward, filled with careful conversation and avoided topics. The breakthrough came during a walk along the waterfront, when Rachel stopped, suddenly turned to me, and spoke with uncharacteristic vulnerability. I was jealous of you my entire life, she confessed. You were always so capable, so together. When you started supporting us financially, it just reinforced that I would never measure up. Taking your money while resenting you for having it was easier than facing my own failures. This honesty opened the door to genuine dialogue. Over the next 3 days, we shared perspectives neither of us had previously voiced, to grieve the family dynamics that had damaged us both, and considered what a healthier sibling relationship might look like moving forward. Before Rachel left, we video called our parents together, a tense but necessary conversation that ended with tentative plans for continued communication. They appeared older than I remembered, humbled by circumstances, and clearly uncomfortable facing me even through a screen. The conversation remained surface level, but it represented a crucial first step. As I drove Rachel to the bus station, she asked a question that caught me off guard. Are you happy here, Luke? Really happy? I mean, not just making the best of things. The question deserved honest reflection. I'm building a life based on my own choices for the first time, I answered carefully. Some days are incredibly lonely. Other days I feel more authentic than I ever have before. It's complicated, but yes, there's real happiness in discovering who I am beyond what I can do for other people. She nodded understanding, passing between us, as we hugged goodbye. We spent so many years taking from you, she said softly. I hope someday we can be people who add to your life instead. Personal growth extended beyond family reconciliation into other areas of my life. After years of avoiding romantic entanglements due to family obligations, I met Allison during a community fundraiser in early spring. A pediatric nurse with kind eyes and a quick wit, she approached relationships with refreshing directness. My last boyfriend couldn't understand why I wouldn't drop everything when he called, she told me during our second date. Boundaries matter to me. I need someone who respects that. Her words resonated deeply. As our relationship developed, I practiced the skills learned in therapy, communicating needs clearly, respecting differences, recognizing when old patterns threatened to emerge. For the first time, I built a connection based on mutual support rather than one-sided giving. When I finally shared my full family history with Allison, her response reinforced why I had been drawn to her from the beginning. What happened to you was wrong, she said simply, and your journey to heal from it is something I deeply respect. Through Allison's eyes and the perspective of her wonderfully functional family, who welcomed me without reservation, I glimpsed what healthy family dynamics could look like. Their gatherings featured lively debates, where disagreement didn't threaten connection, financial discussions conducted with transparency, and love expressed through presence rather than provision. Work continued to provide fulfillment and growth. My 6-month performance review resulted in additional responsibilities and recognition from executive leadership. The promotion wasn't just professionally satisfying, it represented advancement based solely on merit rather than emotional obligation. For the first time in memory, I felt content in my own skin, building a life aligned with my values rather than shaped by others' needs. The journey toward self-worth independent of utility to others remained ongoing, but each day brought greater clarity and peace. One evening, watching the sunset from my balcony with Allison beside me, I realized I had crossed an invisible threshold. For the first time since childhood, I felt genuinely happy, without requiring family approval to validate that happiness. This quiet revelation that I was enough, just as I was, represented the most profound healing of all. Exactly 1 year after receiving the text message that shattered my world, my phone rang with my father's number, the first direct contact from either parent since our estrangement began. I stepped away from a department meeting, heart pounding to answer. Luke. My father's voice sounded older, hesitant. Do you have a moment to talk? The conversation that followed was awkward but necessary. Dad explained that he and Mom had been working up the courage to call for months, held back by shame and uncertainty about my receptiveness. They had moved back to Portland, renting a modest apartment and finding part-time work that covered their basic needs. We've had a lot of time to think about everything he said, his voice catching. About how we treated you. About what Jeffrey manipulated us into believing about you. We were wrong, son. So terribly wrong. He detailed how Uncle Jeffrey had left them with significant debt before disappearing completely. How they had struggled to rebuild their lives without my support, and how the experience had forced them to confront their own role in our family's dysfunction. Your mother wants to speak with you too, he added, but she's afraid you won't forgive her. I told her you deserve the chance to make that decision for yourself. Rather than rushing to their apartment or offering immediate financial rescue as I would have in the past, I suggested a video call later that week, a boundary that felt both self-protective and appropriate. Dad agreed readily, thanking me repeatedly for even being willing to listen. The video call 3 days later became a watershed moment in our healing process. Seeing my parents on screen, Mom's hair now completely gray, Dad thinner than I remembered, I felt a complex mixture of residual hurt and enduring love. We took advantage of your generosity, Mom admitted, tears streaming down her face. We justified it by telling ourselves, you owed us for raising you, that parents deserve to be taken care of by successful children. Jeffrey encouraged that thinking while borrowing money he never intended to repay. Their apology felt genuine, unmarred by requests for financial assistance or attempts to minimize the damage done. For the first time in our relationship, they spoke to me as fellow adults rather than as entitled parents. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness," Dad said. "We broke your trust in fundamental ways. All we're asking for is the chance to rebuild some kind of relationship completely separate from money." I set clear boundaries for moving forward. Regular communication, continued therapy on both sides, complete honesty about finances, and no requests for financial support. They accepted these terms without hesitation. 2 months later, I took a weekend trip to Portland to visit them in person. The modest one-bedroom apartment they now occupied contrasted sharply with the home I had once paid off for them. Mom had found work as a teacher's aide at an after-school program, while Dad took maintenance shifts at a local community center. Their life was simpler now, but there was a dignity in their self-sufficiency that had been missing during years of dependence. Our reunion proved both healing and difficult. Sitting in their small living room drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, we navigated conversational landmines with careful honesty. I shared my experience of abandonment, they acknowledged their exploitation of my generosity, and together we examined the family patterns that had led us to such a painful breaking point. "We mistook your financial support for emotional connection," Mom reflected. "Instead of appreciating your generosity, we came to expect it, then resent it, then depend on it. When you started setting boundaries, it felt like rejection rather than healthy separation." At their suggestion, we attended a session with a family therapist during my visit. Dr. Martin specialized in family estrangement and financial codependence, providing expert guidance for establishing healthier patterns. With her facilitation, we developed communication strategies and relationship boundaries that protected everyone's dignity. "Financial support between family members isn't inherently problematic," she explained. "The problems arise when that support becomes entangled with emotional manipulation, lack of transparency, and absence of boundaries." Over subsequent months, our healing progressed with intentional effort on all sides. I visited Portland quarterly. They respected my financial boundaries completely, and we slowly rebuilt trust through consistent honesty. We created new traditions that emphasized presence over presence, hiking in Forest Park, cooking meals together, playing board games that often dissolved into laughter. Rachel's journey paralleled our parents in many ways. She had completed a semester at community college without my financial assistance, working evenings and weekends to cover tuition. Her newfound independence brought a maturity I hadn't seen in her before. "I needed to prove to myself that I could do this on my own," she explained during one of our regular video calls. "Not just for you to see, but for me to know I'm capable." Uncle Jeffrey remained conspicuously absent from our reconciliation. He had apparently moved to Nevada after his final manipulation failed, leaving behind debts and damaged relationships with no attempt at amends. Though my parents occasionally received calls from unknown numbers they suspected might be him, they had made the difficult decision to sever contact completely. He was family too, Dad acknowledged during a particularly honest conversation, but he never wanted what was best for any of us, including himself. That's not what family should be. As my relationship with my biological family healed within new, healthier parameters, my chosen family expanded. Allison became a central part of my life, her steadfast support and clear-eyed perspective, helping me navigate complex family dynamics without losing myself in the process. After 18 months of dating, I invited her to move into my Seattle apartment. The decision to share my space, a sanctuary I had carefully created for myself during the darkest period of estrangement, represented significant healing and trust. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Allison asked, characteristically direct. "Your independence means a lot to you." "I've learned the difference between isolation and healthy interdependence," I replied. "I want to build a life with you where we each maintain our wholeness while creating something beautiful together." The first time my parents visited Seattle to meet Allison marked another milestone in our reconciliation. I watched nervously as they interacted, hyper-aware of old patterns that might re-emerge. To my relief, they related to her with genuine interest and respect, making no demands and offering sincere thanks when we hosted them for dinner. "She's lovely," Mom told me privately. "And more importantly, she sees you, the real you, not just what you can provide. I'm sorry it took us so long to do the same." Professional success continued alongside personal healing. My leadership style evolved to incorporate the boundaries and self-awareness therapy had helped me develop. I learned to mentor team members without assuming responsibility for their success, to delegate effectively without micromanaging, and to recognize when my desire to solve others' problems stemmed from unhealthy patterns rather than appropriate leadership. 2 years after the text message that had once devastated me, I stood on my balcony reflecting on the journey. The pain of that rejection had forced growth I might otherwise have avoided indefinitely. By losing what I thought was essential, my identity as family provider, I had discovered something far more valuable: my inherent worth independent of utility to others. The text message that initially broke my heart had ultimately freed me from patterns that would have continued indefinitely otherwise. Without that clean break, I might never have established necessary boundaries or discovered who I could be beyond constant giving. This realization didn't romanticize the pain or excuse the betrayal. The abandonment by people I had supported for years remained one of the most painful experiences of my life. But the growth that emerged from that devastation transformed me in ways I now recognized as necessary and ultimately positive. I had learned that genuine love doesn't require financial transactions or sacrificing self-care. I had discovered that helping others while maintaining healthy boundaries creates more sustainable support than endless giving that breeds resentment. I had recognized that family connections can be rebuilt on new foundations when all parties commit to growth and honesty. Most importantly, I had learned that my value as a human being had never been tied to what I could provide materially. My worth existed independently of my utility to others, a truth I carried forward into all my relationships. Today, my life balances family connections with appropriate boundaries, career success with personal fulfillment, generosity with self-respect. I maintain regular contact with my parents, and Rachel enjoying our evolving relationship without financial entanglement. Allison and I are discussing marriage, approaching the future as equal partners with shared goals and individual strengths. The family text message, requesting distance words that once shattered my world, now serves as a reminder of how far we've all come and how much healthier our connections have become. The uncle who packed them up and orchestrated my rejection inadvertently gave me the greatest gift possible, the chance to rebuild my life on a foundation of authenticity and self-worth. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Have you ever experienced a painful rejection that ultimately led to unexpected growth? How did you maintain boundaries with loved ones while leaving space for reconciliation? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and building healthier relationships. Remember that your worth is never determined by what you give to others. You are enough exactly as you are. Thanks for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey toward authentic connections and self-respect.